afternoon sun hung low over the Sierra Nevada mountains, casting long shadows across the rifle range at the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center. Staff Sergeant Maya Torres wiped the sweat from her brow as she surveyed the cleanup operation, her keen eyes tracking every movement of the junior Marines policing brass and securing equipment. After 12 years in the Army, the last 4 as a senior marksmanship instructor, she developed an almost supernatural ability to spot carelessness from 100 yards away. "Daniels," she called out, her voice cutting through the mountain air. "That Barrett isn't a baseball bat. Carry it like you actually care about a $70,000 weapon system." The young Marine flinched, immediately adjusting his grip on the .50 caliber rifle. Maya shook her head, making a mental note to have another conversation with the gunnery sergeant about proper equipment handling. This inter-service assignment had its challenges. Army Staff Sergeant overseeing Marine training facilities wasn't exactly a common posting, but she'd earned her place here through sheer competence and an almost legendary reputation with long-range rifles. She knelt beside a shooting position, examining the disturbed earth and scattered ammunition casings. The grouping patterns told a story. Someone had been fighting their weapon instead of working with it. She picked up a spent .338 Lapua Magnum casing, rolling it between her fingers as she calculated wind speeds and elevation adjustments in her head. Sloppy. The whole exercise had been sloppy. "Find something interesting, Staff Sergeant." Maya looked up to find a man watching her from the entrance to the range, flanked by 5 others in unmarked fatigues. Even without insignia, everything about them screamed special operations, from their carefully maintained weapons to the way they moved with predatory economy. The speaker was tall, maybe 6'2", with sharp blue eyes that assessed her with the same intensity she just applied to the empty brass. She stood, dusting off her knees. "Just wondering why your team's grouping looked like a shotgun pattern at 800 meters, she replied evenly. "You must be the SEAL team we were told to expect." A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face, followed by something that might have been amusement. "Commander Jack Keller," he said, extending a hand. "And that's a hell of an opening line. You make a habit of critiquing teams before introductions." Maya shook his hand, firm grip, callous trigger finger. "I make a habit of observing." The wind was gusting 12 to 15 knots from the northwest, temperature dropping as the sun got lower. Your shooters were compensating for midday conditions on shots taken an hour ago. She gestured toward the distant targets. Basic atmospheric awareness would have tightened those groups by half. Keller's jaw tightened slightly, and his team members exchanged glances. Maya knew she was pushing it. SEALs weren't accustomed to Army staff sergeants pointing out their shortcomings, but accuracy was accuracy, regardless of which patch you wore. "Those were warm-up shots," one of Keller's men said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "Then I'd hate to see the real thing," Maya replied, though her tone remained professional. She turned back to Keller. "Your team has the range scheduled for 600 tomorrow. We'll have the equipment prepped and the targets set at standard distances, 400, 600, 800, and 1,000 meters. "Standard distances," Keller repeated, something calculating in his expression. "What's your max effective range, Staff Sergeant?" "Tours, and I've confirmed kills at 2,100 meters in Afghanistan. Training shots out to 2,800. "Confirmed kills," Keller said slowly. "Army doesn't have many female snipers with combat experience at that range." "Army doesn't have many snipers at that range, period," Maya corrected. "Male or female, which is why I'm here teaching instead of deployed." Keller walked closer, his eyes moving from Maya to the distant mountain ridgeline and back again. "You know what the record for longest confirmed kill is?" 3,540 meters. Canadian JTF-2 sniper in Iraq, 2017. Maya crossed her arms. "Why?" "Because I've got a shot that needs to be made at 4,000 meters, maybe more, depending on terrain." Keller's voice dropped slightly. Mountain environment, extreme elevation, variable winds, the kind of shot that's more prayer than science. No such thing, Maya said immediately. Every shot is science. Ballistics, atmospheric pressure, Coriolis effect, spin drift. You account for the variables, you make the shot. Confident. Realistic. A slow smile spread across Keller's face, and Maya recognized it immediately, the look of a man about to test someone's limits. Prove it, he said. Right now. That ridge, he pointed to a distant outcropping, is 4,100 meters according to our range finder. You put a round anywhere near a man-sized target at that distance, and I'll personally request you as a consultant for my team's training cycle. Maya's heart rate kicked up slightly, though her expression remained neutral. 4,000 meters. It was beyond extreme, beyond what most people considered possible with conventional rifles. The variables multiplied exponentially at that distance. Bullet drop measured in stories rather than inches, wind drift that could push a round off target by dozens of feet, the Earth's rotation actually affecting trajectory. And if I miss, she asked, then you admit that maybe SEALs know a thing or two that Army instructors don't. It was a sucker's bet, and they both knew it. But Maya felt the familiar pull of the challenge, the same force that had driven her to become one of the best long-range shooters in the military despite every obstacle thrown in her path. What's the wager worth, she asked, because talk is cheap, Commander. How about this? You make the shot, I buy your entire cleanup crew dinner at Rosie's in town. Miss, and you buy mine. Maya glanced back at the Marines still securing equipment, then at the distant ridge barely visible in the fading light. This was insane, professionally inadvisable, exactly the kind of showboating that got people reprimanded. She found herself walking toward the equipment shed anyway. Give me 15 minutes for calculations and setup, she called over her shoulder. And Commander, you might want to make reservations. My crew eats a lot. As she disappeared into the shed, Maya heard one of the SEALs whistle low. Boss, did you just get hustled by an Army staff sergeant? Keller's response was quiet but clear. We're about to find out. Maya emerged with a Che-Tak M200 intervention, one of the few rifles capable of accurate fire at extreme distances. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking the scope, testing the bolt action, loading a .408 Che-Tak round. Around her, word had spread. Marines abandoned their cleanup duties. Keller's team gathered close. Even a few officers emerged from the command building to watch. This was either going to be the best shot of her career or the most public failure she'd ever experienced. Maya settled into position, feeling the familiar calm descend as the world narrowed to calculations, breathing, and that distant ridge where her target waited. She exhaled slowly and began her firing sequence, unaware that this single moment would change the trajectory of everything to come. The bullet's impact came 7 seconds after Maya squeezed the trigger, an eternity in the shooting world. Through the high-powered spotting scope, Keller watched the distant ridge, his breath held despite years of training that should have made such reactions impossible. Then a small puff of dust erupted 18 inches, left of the metal silhouette target they'd hastily mounted at 4,100 meters. Holy shit, breathed one of his SEALs. It wasn't a hit, but at that distance, with a cold rifle, no preparation time, and fading light playing havoc with atmospheric conditions, it was close enough to be extraordinary. Keller had seen Olympic-level shooters miss by yards at half that range. Maya remained in position for another moment, her breathing steady, then cleared the rifle and stood. Her expression revealed nothing, no disappointment, no pride, just the calm professionalism of someone who'd done exactly what she'd calculated she could do. Wind shifted 0.3 meters per second during bullet flight, she said, more to herself than anyone else. Should have accounted for the temperature drop, lost maybe 20 feet of velocity over that distance. Keller approached, his competitive instinct warring with genuine admiration. That was a 4,100-meter shot that missed by less than half a meter. Most shooters couldn't come within 50 meters. Most shooters don't do the math, Maya replied, already breaking down the rifle. Distance isn't the enemy, assumptions are. Every variable can be calculated if you're willing to do the work. Rosie's at 1900 hours, Keller said. My treat, your crew earned it. Maya paused, looking up at him with those dark, analytical eyes. The bet was I had to hit the target. The bet was that you'd prove you knew what you were talking about. Consider it proven. He gestured to his team. We've got a problem, Staff Sergeant Torres. My team is preparing for an operation in mountain terrain where we may need to engage targets at distances most people consider impossible. We've got 3 weeks to get proficient at extreme long-range shooting, beyond 3,000 meters, beyond anything we've trained for. That's not enough time, Maya said immediately. It's the time we have. Keller's voice dropped lower, meant only for her. I've got 6 shooters who are excellent at CQB, good at medium range, adequate at standard long range. What they're not is miracle workers at distances where you need a PhD in physics to make the shot. I need them to be better than adequate. Maya studied him for a long moment, then glanced at his team. She could see it now, the tension in their shoulders, the way they'd watched her shot with more than just competitive interest. These men were preparing for something real, something dangerous that required capabilities they didn't currently possess. I'd need approval from Colonel Harrison, she said, and your command would need to formally request Army assistance. Already drafted the request before we arrived, Keller admitted. I did my homework on you, Staff Sergeant. 3 combat deployments, expert marksmanship instructor rating, advanced degree in applied physics from night school. You're exactly what we need. Flattery. Facts, Keller extended his hand again. What do you say? Help us not get killed by our own incompetence. Maya shook his hand, feeling the calluses that matched her own. 600 tomorrow. And Commander, tell your men to bring notepads. We're starting with atmospheric science before anyone touches a trigger. The next 72 hours blurred into an intense cycle of classroom instruction and practical application. Maya discovered that teaching SEALs was different from teaching conventional forces. They asked sharper questions, challenged assumptions more aggressively, and absorbed information at a pace that impressed even her. Keller himself proved to be an exceptional student. He'd already studied long-range shooting extensively, but Maya showed him the gaps in his knowledge. The subtle interplay between humidity and powder burn rates, the way mirage could reveal wind patterns invisible to the naked eye, the mental calculations that could shave precious seconds off target acquisition. By the 3rd day, his team was consistently hitting targets at 2,000 meters. By the 5th, they'd pushed that to 2,400. It was during a break on the 6th day that Maya noticed the discrepancy. She'd gone to the ammunition storage facility to requisite more .338 Lapua Magnum rounds for the afternoon session and found the inventory logs inconsistent with actual stock. Problem? Keller appeared behind her, 2 bottles of water in hand. Maya accepted one, frowning at the logbook. Maybe. We should have 840 rounds of match-grade .338 according to last week's inventory. I count 710 in the locker. Could be administrative error. Rounds logged but not delivered or used for another training cycle. Could be, Maya agreed, but something nagged at her. She'd been managing ammunition inventories for years. 130 rounds of expensive match-grade ammunition didn't just disappear into paperwork errors. I'll file a discrepancy report. Let me know what you find. Keller glanced at his watch. Team's waiting. Today's the day we push for 3,000 meters. Maya followed him back to the range, but the ammunition discrepancy lingered in her mind like an itch she couldn't scratch. She'd learned long ago to trust her instincts. They'd kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. That evening, After Keller's team had successfully engaged targets at 3,200 meters, a personal best for all of them, Maya remained behind to review the facility's ammunition records for the past month. What she found made her skin prickle with unease. Over the past 6 weeks, small quantities of various ammunition types had gone missing. Nothing dramatic, 20 rounds here, 50 there, but always match grade or specialized ammunition. The kind used for precision work. The kind that was expensive and difficult to acquire through normal channels. She was cross-referencing delivery schedules with usage logs when Keller knocked on her office doorframe. "Burning midnight oil?" he asked. Maya gestured to her computer screen. "Those ammunition discrepancies aren't clerical errors. Someone's been systematically stealing small quantities of premium ammunition over the past 6 weeks. Different types, different calibers, but always precision rounds." Keller's expression shifted from casual to alert. "How much total?" "Maybe 800 rounds across various calibers. Street value, if you could even find this stuff on the black market, probably $50,000. "That's not theft," Keller said slowly. "That's supply chain. Someone's feeding ammunition to someone else on a regular basis." "On a military installation," Maya added, "which means inside access." They stared at each other as the implications settled between them. What had seemed like a simple inventory problem suddenly felt like the edge of something larger and more dangerous. "Could be someone supplementing their income," Keller offered, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "Selling to civilian shooters or collectors." "Could be," Maya agreed, "or it could be something worse. You should report this to base security." "I will tomorrow, after I have more documentation." Maya saved her files and stood. "Probably nothing. Like you said, someone making extra money." But as Keller walked her to her quarters, both of them carried weapons they normally wouldn't have bothered with on base. Neither mentioned it, but the coincidence of missing precision ammunition and a SEAL team training for extreme-distance mountain operations felt less like coincidence and more like the universe providing a warning. Neither of them yet realized just how right that instinct would prove to be. The training exercise began at 4:30 hours, with Maya and Keller's 6-man SEAL team inserting via helicopter into the remote Sierras 40 kilometers north of the base. The mission parameters were straightforward. Establish observation posts at extreme elevation, practice target acquisition and engagement at distances exceeding 3,500 meters, and exfiltrate before nightfall. Maya had run dozens of similar exercises, but something felt different this time. Perhaps it was the lingering questions about the missing ammunition, or maybe just the particular stillness of the pre-dawn mountain air. Whatever the cause, she'd triple-checked her gear and insisted on bringing more ammunition than the exercise profile required. "You expecting a war up here, Staff Sergeant?" asked Petty Officer Kyle Morrison, Keller's second-in-command, as they hiked toward their primary position. "Expecting Murphy's Law," Maya replied, scanning the tree line with practiced eyes. "Anything that can go wrong will go wrong." Keller moved up beside her, his breath steady despite the punishing pace and elevation. 2 weeks of intensive training had transformed the professional respect between them into something approaching partnership. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm, Maya's technical expertise complementing Keller's tactical experience. "Ridge ahead," he said, consulting his GPS. "Should give us clear sight lines to the valley below. Range to far ridge is 3,800 meters." They reached the position 90 minutes later, establishing a concealed observation post among the rocks and scattered pines. While the SEAL team set up equipment, Maya conducted her atmospheric analysis. Temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, wind speed at multiple elevations. The data would be critical for accurate shooting at extreme distance. "Contact," Morrison hissed suddenly. "Movement, 270 degrees, approximately 800 meters." Everyone froze. This was supposed to be restricted military land. No civilians, no hunters, nothing but wilderness for miles in every direction. Through her spotting scope, Maya found what Morrison had seen: 3 figures moving with tactical precision through the forest below. They wore civilian hiking gear, but their movement patterns were too deliberate, too coordinated. Could be hunters who missed the restricted area signs, offered another SEAL, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Keller studied them through binoculars. Hunters don't move in bounding Overwatch formation, and those aren't hunting rifles, those are AR platforms. Maya tracked the figures as they approached a rocky outcropping. One of them produced what looked like a laptop, setting it up on a portable table. The second began assembling something from a backpack. "Is that a fucking antenna array?" Morrison muttered. It was. Maya watched as the figures erected a sophisticated communications setup, pointing it not outward toward potential radio contacts, but directly toward the Marine Corps base 40 kilometers south. "They're conducting surveillance on the base," Keller said, his voice tight. "Recording transmission frequencies, monitoring communications." "We need to report this," Maya said, reaching for her radio. The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the mountains, and rock chips exploded inches from her head. "Contact," Keller shouted, already returning fire. 3 shooters elevated position 400 meters northeast. Maya rolled behind cover as bullets stitched across the rocks where she'd been standing. Her training took over: assess threats, identify positions, return fire. Through gaps in the rocks, she saw muzzle flashes from at least 4 positions in the tree line above them. "They had Overwatch positioned on our position," Morrison called out between controlled bursts. "They knew we were coming." The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. This wasn't a chance encounter, this was an ambush. Someone had known about the training exercise, known their route, known exactly where they'd established their observation post. "Suppressing fire," Keller commanded. "Tours Morrison, fall back to secondary position. We need to break contact." Maya laid down, covering fire while half the team displaced, her rounds forcing the attackers to seek cover. Military muscle memory carried her through the tactical withdrawal: move, shoot, communicate, move again. But part of her mind was racing through the implications: the missing ammunition, the surveillance equipment, the ambush. Someone on base was feeding intelligence to hostile actors. "Morrison's hit," one of the SEALs shouted. Maya saw the petty officer stumble, blood spreading across his shoulder. She and another SEAL grabbed him, hauling him toward cover while Keller's precise rifle fire kept the attackers suppressed. "How bad?" Maya asked, examining the wound. "Through and through, missed the bone," Morrison grunted. "I can still shoot." "You can still move," Maya corrected. "We need to get off this mountain." The firefight continued in controlled bursts as Keller's team executed a textbook tactical withdrawal. Maya found herself impressed by their discipline. No panic, no wasted ammunition, just professional violence of action. But they were outnumbered and outpositioned, fighting uphill against enemies who'd had time to prepare. "Rally Point Alpha, 500 meters southwest," Keller ordered. "Bounding Overwatch, go." They moved in pairs, covering each other through the forest. Maya could hear the attackers pursuing, their coordination suggesting military training. These weren't random criminals or survivalists, these were professionals. A bullet clipped a tree next to Maya's head, and she dropped, returning fire at a figure moving through the underbrush. Her round caught him center mass, and he went down hard. Through her scope, she got a clear look at his equipment: expensive tactical gear, modern rifle, professional-grade optics. "These guys are equipped like a private military contractor," she called to Keller. "Which means funding and organization," he replied, engaging another target. "This is bigger than ammunition theft." They reached the rally point, a depression between 2 massive boulders that provided cover from multiple angles. Maya did a quick head count. All 7 of them accounted for. Morrison wounded but mobile, ammunition running low. "Radio's not working," one of the SEALs reported. "Something's jamming us." "Of course it is," Keller said grimly. He pulled out a map tracing routes with his finger. "Nearest extraction point is 6 kilometers. We move fast, we can make it before they reposition." "They'll have our route covered," Maya said. "They've been planning this." "Then we don't take the expected route." Keller pointed to a steep ravine marked on the map. "We go down through Devil's Canyon. It's technical climbing, exposed and dangerous as hell." "Which is exactly why they won't expect it," Maya finished. Morrison laughed despite his wound. "I like how you two finish each other's sentences. Very cute under fire." "Shut up and move, Morrison," Keller said, but Maya caught the slight smile that crossed his face. They began the descent into the ravine, leaving the sounds of pursuit behind. But Maya knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Someone had tried to kill them, and someone on base had made it possible. As they climbed down the treacherous canyon walls, Maya made herself a promise. She was going to find out who, and she was going to make them pay for it. The extraction helicopter touched down at the base's medical facility 3 hours after the firefight. Morrison was rushed into surgery, while the rest of Keller's team gave their statements to base security and NCIS. Maya sat in the waiting room, her uniform still dirt-stained and blood-speckled, running through the ambush in her mind for the 100th time. "Staff Sergeant Torres." She looked up to find a Navy investigator, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, NCIS, holding a tablet and wearing an expression of professional skepticism. "I need to ask you some questions about today's incident." "Incident?" Maya's voice came out harder than intended. "We were ambushed by a coordinated team using military tactics. One of our men is in surgery. That's not an incident, that's an attack. Which is why we need your statement." Chen sat down, her tone softening slightly. "Walk me through what happened from the beginning." Maya recounted the exercise. The insertion, the observation post, the armed men conducting surveillance, the ambush. Chen took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but something in her body language suggested she'd already formed conclusions. "And you're certain these individuals were conducting surveillance on the base?" Chen asked. "I know a directional antenna array when I see one," Maya replied. "And I know what surveillance equipment looks like." "The issue, Staff Sergeant, is that when base security went to investigate the coordinates you provided, they found no evidence of any personnel, equipment, or even recent human activity. No shell casings, no blood despite you claiming to have hit at least one target, no communications equipment." Maya stared at her. "That's impossible. There were at least 7 hostiles. We exchanged fire for 15 minutes. "We found evidence of your team's presence," Chen interrupted. "Your brass, your defensive positions, but nothing indicating anyone else was there." The implication hung in the air like cordite smoke. Maya felt her jaw tighten. "You think we imagined being shot at?" Morrison's wound appeared spontaneously. "I think it's possible that Petty Officer Morrison was injured during the difficult terrain movement, and in the confusion and stress of a training exercise at high altitude, the situation was misinterpreted." "That's bullshit and you know it," Maya said flatly. Chen's expression remained neutral. "What I know is that this is the second unusual incident you've been involved with in 2 weeks. First the ammunition discrepancies, now this alleged ambush. That's quite a pattern, Staff Sergeant." Before Maya could respond, Keller entered the waiting room, his face thunderous. "Morrison's out of surgery. The doctors removed a 5.56 NATO round from his shoulder. You want to explain how terrain caused that, Commander Chen?" "I'm simply following the evidence." "The evidence is that someone cleaned that site before your people arrived," Keller cut her off. "Which means either your team is incompetent or someone got there first with enough advance warning to sterilize a firefight scene." Chen stood, her professional composure cracking slightly. "Be very careful about the accusations you're making, Commander Keller," implying that Naval Criminal Investigative Service is compromised. "I'm implying that someone with access to operational information knew exactly where we'd be and when. I'm implying that the same someone is now covering their tracks." Keller moved closer to Chen, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "And I'm implying that if you can't see that, you're either blind or complicit." Chen's face flushed. "This interview is over. Both of you will remain on base pending further investigation. That's an order." She left, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Maya and Keller stood in silence for a moment. "That went well," Maya finally said. "We're being set up," Keller replied. "Or shut down, maybe both." Over the next 48 hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The official investigation concluded that Keller's team had likely encountered poachers or survivalists who fled when confronted, and that the surveillance equipment was probably misidentified camping gear. Morrison's wound, while certainly from a rifle round, could have come from warning shots that escalated into an accidental exchange of fire. It was a neat narrative that ignored every piece of evidence suggesting otherwise. Maya spent those 2 days cross-referencing personnel records, base access logs, and ammunition inventory reports. She worked quietly, using her administrative access to pull data that painted a disturbing picture. 3 personnel had the access and knowledge necessary to tip off the ambush. Captain David Reeves, a logistics officer with a gambling problem documented in his service record. Marcus Webb, a former Marine now working base security who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times and had encrypted email traffic to unknown recipients. And Dr. Richard Volkov, a civilian contractor working on communication systems who'd made 6 trips to Mexico in the past 4 months. "It's one of these 3, Maya told Keller when they met covertly in the base gym after hours. "Maybe all 3 working together." Keller studied her laptop screen, his jaw working. "We take this to base command." "Who have already decided we're unreliable witnesses," Maya finished. "Chen's report is setting us up to be dismissed as paranoid or unreliable. Anything we bring forward now will be seen through that lens." "Then we gather ironclad proof." "How? We're confined to base, under investigation, and whoever's behind this is obviously watching our movements." Keller was quiet for a long moment. "Morrison's awake. I visited him this afternoon. He told me something interesting. Right before he was hit, he saw one of the attackers clearly through his scope. Said the guy had a distinctive tattoo on his neck, some kind of Cyrillic script." "Russian mob?" Maya asked. "Or foreign intelligence. Either way, this isn't just about stolen ammunition anymore." Keller pulled out his phone, showing her an encrypted message. "I've got contacts in naval intelligence, people I trust. They're willing to help, but they need something concrete." "Like catching one of our suspects in the act," Maya said slowly. "Exactly. We set up surveillance on all 3, watch their patterns, wait for one of them to make contact." "That's a lot of surveillance for 2 people who are supposed to be confined to base." Keller smiled grimly. "Good thing I've got 5 SEALs who owe me favors and hate sitting around." They spent the next week conducting quiet surveillance, taking turns watching Reeves, Webb, and Volkov. It was tedious work made more complicated by the need to avoid official attention, but SEALs were trained in reconnaissance. The break came on the 8th night. Maya was watching Volkov's off-base apartment when she saw him exit at 2300 hours, well past normal hours. She followed at a distance as he drove to a warehouse district near the town's industrial port. "I've got him moving to the old shipping warehouses on Harbor Street," she radioed to Keller on their encrypted channel. "He's meeting someone." "On my way, don't engage alone." But Maya was already positioning herself with a view of the warehouse Volkov had entered. Through her night vision scope, she watched him meet with 3 men, Eastern European features, professional bearing, and most critically, one of them wore a distinctive neck tattoo in Cyrillic script. Morrison's shooter. Maya photographed the exchange with her phone's camera, Volkov handing over documents, the men passing him an envelope thick with what looked like cash. Then one of them produced a laptop, and Volkov began pointing at what appeared to be building schematics displayed on the screen. Keller arrived with two of his team members, taking position on the other side of the warehouse. Maya could see him through her scope, gesturing for her to hold position while they gathered more evidence. Then Volkov turned, looking directly at the window where Maya was concealed. His eyes widened in recognition. "Shit," Maya breathed. "I'm burned, he made me." The warehouse exploded into motion. The men drew weapons, and Volkov pointed directly at Maya's position. She rolled away as gunfire shattered the window, bullets punching through the walls of the abandoned office she'd been using. "Engaging," Keller's voice came through her earpiece, followed by the distinctive crack of his rifle. Maya returned fire, her rounds forcing two of the men to take cover. But she was outgunned and exposed, stuck in a second-story room with limited exits. Through the chaos, she saw Volkov running for a back door, the laptop clutched under his arm. "Volkov's rabbiting," she shouted. "Don't let him get away." One of Keller's SEALs moved to intercept, but the men with Volkov laid down, suppressing fire. In the confusion of the firefight, Maya saw Volkov reach the door, then saw Keller step out of the shadows, his sidearm raised. "Federal agent, drop the laptop and get on the ground." It was a bluff. Keller had no federal authority here, but Volkov panicked. He spun, drawing a concealed pistol, and fired wildly in Keller's direction. Keller's return shot was precise and fatal. Volkov dropped, the laptop clattering across the concrete floor. The remaining hostiles, seeing their contact dead, broke and ran. Keller's team pursued, but Maya heard engines roaring as vehicles sped away into the night. Silence fell over the warehouse. Maya descended from her position, joining Keller beside Volkov's body. The civilian contractor stared sightlessly at the ceiling, a neat hole in his center mass. "He drew first," Keller said quietly, holstering his weapon. "You saw it." "I saw it," Maya confirmed. She retrieved the laptop, already dreading the fallout. "But we just killed a civilian contractor in an unauthorized operation on American soil. This is going to get very complicated very fast." Keller pulled out his phone, already dialing. "Then we'd better make sure the truth gets out before someone buries it. Time to call in those naval intelligence contacts. We've got one shot at this. Let's not waste it." As sirens began wailing in the distance, Maya looked at the laptop in her hands. Whatever secrets it held, they'd better be worth the firestorm that was about to descend on both of them. The Naval Intelligence Safe House was a nondescript apartment in San Diego, 2 hours south of the base. Maya sat on a worn couch, watching Keller pace while two intelligence officers, Lieutenant Commander James Harrison and Chief Petty Officer Angela Reeves, examined the contents of Volkov's laptop. "This is worse than we thought," Harrison said, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Much worse." It had been 36 hours since the warehouse shooting. Keller had made his call immediately after the incident, and his contacts had extracted them before local police arrived. Officially, Maya and Keller were AWOL, absent without leave, facing potential court-martial. Unofficially, they were the only people who seemed to understand the scope of what they'd uncovered. "Define worse," Keller said, stopping his packing. Harrison turned the laptop around. The screen displayed schematics of military installations across the western United States, not just the Marine Corps base, but Naval Station San Diego, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, Naval Base Coronado, and 6 others. "Volkov wasn't just selling information about your base," Reeves explained. "He was part of a network coordinating intelligence gathering across multiple installations. Security protocols, guard schedules, vulnerability assessments, deployment calendars, everything you'd need to plan simultaneous attacks. Maya felt her stomach drop. How many targets? 9 confirmed installations, possibly more we haven't identified yet. Harrison pulled up another file. The foreign nationals you encountered, we've identified them through facial recognition. They're SVR, Russian Foreign Intelligence Service. But they're not the only players. We've got connections to Iranian Quds Force operatives, Chinese MSS agents, and at least 2 domestic extremist groups. It's a coordination hub, Keller said slowly. Different actors, different motivations, but someone's orchestrating them, providing intelligence to anyone willing to pay or participate. And it gets better, Harrison said grimly. The attacks are planned for 48 days from now, during Fleet Week in San Diego, when base populations will be at maximum capacity and local emergency services will be stretched thin with civilian events. Maya leaned forward, studying the timeline displayed on screen. That's not enough time to properly investigate and shut down an operation this size through official channels. By the time everything's verified, vetted, and approved up the chain of command, the attacks will already be in motion, Reeves finished. Which is why we're having this conversation in a safe house instead of at NCIS headquarters. There's at least one highly placed mole in the investigation chain, someone who can shut down inquiries, suppress evidence, redirect investigations. Like what happened with Chen, Maya said. Harrison nodded. Lieutenant Commander Chen filed her report classifying your mountain encounter as a misunderstanding. That report was approved and fast-tracked by Captain Theodore Marsh, the same captain who oversees security protocols for 3 of the target installations. So we can't go through official channels, Keller said. What are our options? Harrison and Reeves exchanged a long look. Officially, we have no authorization to act on this intelligence. Our investigation into the mountain incident was shut down 24 hours ago. We've been ordered to close the file and move on. Unofficially, Maya asked. Unofficially, the network's leadership is operating from a compound in the Sierra Madre Mountains, approximately 80 kilometers across the Mexican border. It's remote, high elevation, heavily defended. The kind of place that would require a SEAL team and air support to assault properly. Which we don't have authorization for, Keller said. Correct. Any military incursion across the border would be an international incident. Even if we could prove the threat, the political and diplomatic considerations would delay action for months. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Maya understood what was being proposed without anyone saying it directly. An unauthorized, deniable reconnaissance operation across international borders. The kind of mission that could end careers or lives. What's the intelligence value of this compound? Keller asked carefully. Reeves pulled up satellite imagery. It's their command and control center, communications hub, planning facility, and the location where they're coordinating the final logistics for the attacks. Hit this, and the entire network loses coordination. The individual cells might still try something, but without central planning and real-time intelligence, their effectiveness drops by 80%. Hit it how? Maya asked. You said it's heavily defended. We can't assault a fortified compound with just a few people. We don't need to assault it, Harrison said. We need to gather actionable intelligence that proves the threat beyond any deniability. Photos, documents, communications intercepts, evidence so solid that it forces official action regardless of who's trying to suppress it. Keller studied the satellite imagery. The compound is on a plateau surrounded by higher terrain. There, he pointed to a ridge, that overlook has clear sight lines to the entire facility. What's the distance? Harrison checked his notes. 4,200 meters. Why? Keller looked at Maya, and she saw the calculation forming in his mind. The same calculation she was already making. Because at that distance, with the right equipment and the right shooter, We could conduct surveillance without ever entering the compound or even crossing into weapons range. We observe, document, photograph, and extract. No international incident, no assault, just reconnaissance from outside their perimeter. 4,200 meters, Maya repeated softly. That's extreme distance. Atmospheric conditions at that elevation, wind patterns in mountain terrain, the variables would be immense. But possible, Harrison pressed. Maya thought about her shot at the range 2 weeks ago, for 100 meters, close enough to prove the concept. But that had been a single shot with a stationary target in controlled conditions. This would be sustained observation through a rifle scope, photographing moving personnel and reading documents at a distance where most people couldn't even see the compound clearly. Possible, she said finally. Barely. We'd need specialized equipment, perfect conditions, and a lot of luck. I can get the equipment, Harrison said. Enhanced optics, high-resolution cameras adapted for long-range scopes, satellite weather data for that region. What else? A team we can trust completely, Keller said. This goes sideways, there's no rescue coming. We'll be on our own in hostile territory. My 4 uninjured SEALs, Maya suggested. They've already proven they'll follow this through. Keller nodded slowly. And Morrison, if he's cleared for duty, he earned the right to see this finished. Morrison was discharged from medical 3 hours ago, Reeves said. Restricted duty but mobile. I suspect he won't let a little thing like restricted duty stop him. Harrison stood, closing the laptop. Then here's what happens. Officially, you're both AWOL and subject to arrest on site. Unofficially, you have 72 hours to get what we need. After that, the trail goes cold and the attacks move forward on schedule. And if we're caught, Maya asked. Then you're rogue operators conducting an unauthorized cross-border incursion, and the United States government will disavow any knowledge of your actions. Harrison's expression softened slightly. But if you succeed, you'll have prevented the largest coordinated attack on military installations since Pearl Harbor. That counts for something. Just not officially, Keller said dryly. Welcome to intelligence work, Commander. They spent the next 6 hours planning. Harrison provided maps, satellite imagery, weather forecasts, and equipment specifications. Maya calculated shooting solutions for various atmospheric conditions, while Keller plotted infiltration and extraction routes that would minimize their exposure. As dawn broke over San Diego, Maya found herself on the safe house balcony, staring at the lightening sky. Keller joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Having second thoughts? He asked, offering her a cup. Having all the thoughts, Maya replied. This is insane. We're planning to cross into Mexico, conduct surveillance on a hostile compound from 4,200 meters, and somehow get actionable intelligence that saves 9 military bases, all without being caught, killed, or starting an international incident. When you put it that way, it does sound ambitious. Maya laughed despite herself. That's one word for it. Keller was quiet for a moment. You don't have to do this. This started with my training request. I can't ask you to. You're not asking, Maya interrupted. I'm choosing. Those people tried to kill us in the mountains. They're planning to kill hundreds, maybe thousands more, if I can stop that. She trailed off, searching for the right words. I became a soldier to protect people. This is what that means. Even if it costs everything. Maya met his eyes, seeing her own determination reflected there. Especially then. They stood together watching the sunrise, both aware they might not see many more. In 72 hours they'd either be heroes or criminals, possibly both, possibly neither. But they'd be together, doing what they'd sworn to do. Behind them, Harrison appeared in the doorway, teams assembling, time to gear up. Maya drained her coffee and turned toward the door, Keller beside her. Whatever came next, they'd face it the way they'd faced everything else, with precision, courage, and the unshakable belief that some shots were worth taking, no matter how impossible they seemed. The border crossing happened at 200 hours through a remote section of desert where surveillance was thin and terrain favored small teams. Maya felt the weight of the decision with each step into Mexican territory. They were now operating completely outside legal authority, reliant only on their skills and each other. Keller's team moved like shadows. Morrison, still favoring his injured shoulder but refusing to be left behind. Rodriguez and Chen, the team's communications specialists. Patterson, their combat medic. And Briggs, whose specialty in demolitions wouldn't be needed but whose steady presence was invaluable. 6 SEALs and 1 Army staff sergeant, carrying enough specialized equipment to conduct what might be the most technically demanding surveillance operation any of them had attempted. The infiltration took 18 hours of brutal mountain hiking. They moved only during darkness, hiding during daylight in carefully selected positions that provided concealment and observation. Harrison's intelligence had been accurate. They spotted patrol patterns that suggested the compound's security extended kilometers beyond its walls. "They're not taking chances," Keller murmured as they watched a 4-man patrol pass 200 meters below their hide site. "Military discipline, good equipment, professional movement." "Whoever's running this operation has serious funding," Maya agreed, studying the patrol through her scope. "Those are Russian and 94 rifles, encrypted radios, current-generation night vision." By the second night, they reached their objective, a rocky ridge 4,200 meters from the compound, elevated enough to provide clear sight lines while remaining outside the range of casual observation. As the team established their hide site among the boulders and sparse vegetation, Maya set up her firing position with meticulous care. The rifle was a custom Che TAC M200, modified with a specialized scope that combined traditional optics with a high-resolution digital camera capable of capturing detailed images at extreme range. Harrison had somehow acquired atmospheric sensors that would provide real-time data on wind, temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure, all critical for maintaining accuracy at this distance. "Range confirmed at 4,217 meters, Rodriguez reported, checking his laser rangefinder against GPS data. "Elevation difference 312 meters. Current wind at our position is 8 knots from the northwest, gusting to 12. Maya fed the numbers into her ballistic calculator, then cross-referenced them with her own observations of mirage patterns and vegetation movement at various elevations between their position and the target. At this distance, she wasn't just calculating for the wind at her position or the target. She needed to account for wind at every elevation layer the bullet would pass through. "Atmospheric pressure is stable," Chen added. "Temperatures dropping, though, currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit, forecasted to drop to 44 by midnight." "That'll affect muzzle velocity," Maya said, making adjustments. "We'll need to recalculate every hour." Keller settled in beside her with his own spotting scope. "What are we looking at?" Through the enhanced optics, the compound resolved in surprising detail. The main building was 3 stories, constructed of reinforced concrete with satellite dishes and antenna arrays on the roof. 2 smaller structures flanked it, probably barracks or support facilities. A dozen vehicles were visible in a parking area, including 2 that looked suspiciously like military transport trucks. "Security is tight," Maya observed. "Perimeter fence, guard towers at each corner, roving patrols. This isn't some improvised operation, this is a professional facility." For the next 6 hours, they documented everything. Maya photographed personnel moving between buildings, captured images of documents visible through windows, recorded the arrival of a convoy that delivered equipment crates. The digital camera integrated with her scope produced remarkably clear images despite the extreme distance. Then at 14:30 hours, something changed. "Movement at the main building," Keller said. "Looks like a meeting starting, multiple personnel entering." Maya adjusted her focus, and her breath caught. Through a large window on the second floor, she could see at least 15 people gathering around a conference table. On the wall behind them, a projection screen displayed what looked like facility layouts, the same installation schematics they'd found on Volkov's laptop. "That's our intelligence goldmine," Maya breathed. "If we can photograph those briefing materials." "Can you get clear shots at this distance?" Keller asked. Maya studied the angle, the lighting, the atmospheric conditions. "Maybe. The window glass will cause some distortion, and the resolution at 4,200 meters is pushing the limits. But yes, I think I can get usable images." She adjusted her position, made minute corrections to her scope, and began photographing. Through the enhanced optics, she could make out individual faces, read text on the projection screen, see documents being passed around the table. Each shot required perfect timing, waiting for moments when atmospheric distortion was minimal, when someone wasn't blocking the view, when the lighting was right. "I've got clear shots of at least 8 individuals," she reported. "Facial recognition should be able to identify them. And the documents on screen, those are definitely attack plans. I can see timelines, target assignments, resource allocations." "This is it," Keller said quietly. "This is what we need." Maya continued documenting, her world narrowing to the rhythm of observation, calculation, and capture. She was so focused that she almost missed Morrison's urgent whisper. "We've got a problem. Patrol approaching from the southwest, approximately 600 meters and closing." Maya's blood ran cold. She glanced toward Morrison's position and saw what he'd spotted: a 6-man patrol moving directly toward their ridge, moving with the deliberate pattern of people conducting a search rather than a routine patrol. "How did they spot us?" Rodriguez hissed. "We've maintained perfect noise and light discipline." "Doesn't matter how," Keller said, his command voice cutting through the rising tension. "What matters is they're coming. Patterson, Chen, prepare to suppress if necessary. Everyone else start breaking down non-essential gear. We may need to move fast." But Maya's mind was racing through a different calculation. If they broke position now, they'd lose the intelligence gathering opportunity. The meeting was still in progress. More people were arriving, more documents being displayed. If they stayed and fought, they'd be outnumbered and potentially surrounded. "Commander," she said quietly, "I need 5 more minutes. That meeting is still active, and they're discussing something critical. I can see what looks like final operational orders being distributed." "Tors, we don't have 5 minutes." The crack of a rifle shot cut him off. Rock chips exploded from the boulder above Maya's head. "Contact," Patterson shouted. "They've got our position." The patrol had spread out and opened fire from multiple angles. Maya heard bullets snapping past, impacting the rocks around their hide site. The SEALs returned fire with disciplined precision, but they were in a defensive position with limited cover and enemies who knew exactly where they were. "We need to displace," Keller ordered, "fighting retreat to Rally Point Alpha." But Maya was looking at something else. Through her scope, she'd noticed that the patrol had been maintaining communications. One man was speaking urgently into a radio, his antenna visible against the rocky terrain. "Their communications," she said suddenly. "Commander, if I can take out their radio operator, it'll buy us time before reinforcements arrive. But it's a 600-meter shot downhill with variable winds." "Take it," Keller said immediately. "Everyone else suppressing fire now." The SEALs opened up with a sustained barrage, forcing the patrol to take cover. Maya shifted her position, acquiring the radio operator through her scope. 600 meters was well within her capability, but she was shooting from an awkward position, under stress, with bullets impacting around her. She exhaled slowly, felt the familiar calm descend, and squeezed the trigger. The radio operator dropped, his equipment shattering. The patrol's coordinated fire became noticeably less organized without their communications link. "Nice shot," Morrison called, "but we've still got 5 very angry hostiles and limited ammunition." Maya's mind raced. The patrol was 600 meters away, partially concealed, and now highly motivated. Standard engagement at that range would be a grinding firefight that would draw more enemies. But there was another option, a crazy, nearly impossible option. She looked back at the compound, 4,200 meters away. The meeting was still in progress, but now she could see people reacting to radio calls, pointing toward the ridge where Maya's team was pinned down. "Commander," she said, "I have an idea, but you're going to think I'm insane." "At this point, insane is probably our best option," Keller replied, reloading his rifle. Maya adjusted her scope back to the compound's maximum range. "That communications array on the main building's roof, it's their primary link for coordinating security forces. If I can hit it from here, it'll disrupt their ability to send reinforcements and coordinate the response to our presence." Keller stared at her. "That's a 4,200-meter shot at a target the size of a briefcase, under combat stress, while being shot at." "I know, but it's our best chance of getting out of here alive, and with the intelligence we came for." For a long moment Keller said nothing. Then he nodded. "Everyone, maximum suppression. Torres is taking a shot. Give her the time she needs." The SEALs unleashed everything they had, forcing the patrol to hunker down. Maya settled into her position, blocking out the chaos around her, focusing on the impossible task ahead. 4,200 meters, wind from the northwest gusting, temperature dropping, bullet drop measured in stories, the Earth's rotation affecting trajectory, a target smaller than she'd ever attempted at this distance. She thought of the challenge at the range that had started all of this, Keller's dare, her determination to prove what was possible. She thought of Morrison bleeding in the mountains, of Volkov's laptop and the planned attacks, of the thousands of lives hanging in the balance. Maya Torres had spent her entire career proving that impossible was just another word for difficult. She exhaled, found the space between heartbeats, and took the shot. The world held its breath. 7 seconds. That's how long the bullet took to travel 4,200 meters through mountain air, fighting gravity and wind every meter of the way. 7 seconds that felt like 7 lifetimes as Maya maintained her position, bullets cracking past her head, the SEALs returned fire creating a deafening symphony of violence. Through her scope, she watched the communications array on the compound's roof. Then it exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. "Holy shit, she hit it," Rodriguez shouted. "The array is down." The effect was immediate and dramatic. At the compound, personnel who'd been organizing a response suddenly lost coordination. Maya could see confusion spreading, people gesturing at the destroyed equipment, running between buildings without clear direction. The patrol attacking their position stopped receiving updates, their fire becoming sporadic and disorganized. "Displacement now," Keller ordered. "Torres, we need to move." Maya grabbed her rifle and the precious camera equipment, already running as the SEALs executed a textbook tactical withdrawal. They bounded back from their position in pairs, covering each other, maintaining fire discipline even as they retreated into the rocky terrain. The patrol pursued, but without communication from the compound and minus their radio operator, their coordination was shattered. Patterson dropped one more with a precision shot, and the others broke off, apparently unwilling to chase an enemy of unknown size deeper into the mountains. For the next 18 hours, Keller's team pushed hard toward the border. They traveled through darkness and daylight, abandoning stealth for speed. Maya's legs burned, her lungs ached from the altitude and exertion, but she kept pace with the SEALs through sheer determination. They were 12 kilometers from the border when it happened. The explosion came from their right flank, a rocket-propelled grenade that detonated against the rocks above them. Keller's team scattered, taking cover as automatic weapons fire erupted from 3 positions. "Ambush," Briggs shouted. "They got ahead of us." It was a professional setup. The enemy had predicted their route and positioned forces to intercept. Maya counted at least a dozen hostiles, well-armed and employing fire and maneuver tactics that spoke of military training. "They're trying to box us in," Chen called out. "More movement on our 6, they're closing the trap." Keller was already moving, directing his team with hand signals, creating a defensive perimeter. But Maya could see the math. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on ammunition after the previous engagement. "Rally on that rock formation." Keller pointed to a cluster of boulders 50 meters ahead. "We make our stand there." They moved under covering fire, each seal flowing through the terrain with practiced efficiency. Maya was running beside Morrison when she heard the distinctive whoosh of another RPG launch. Everything happened in slow motion. She saw the grenade's trajectory, saw where it would impact, directly where Keller was moving to establish the defensive position. Maya didn't think, she just reacted. "Commander down." She hit Keller in a tackle, driving them both behind a boulder as the RPG detonated. The blast was deafening, the concussive force slamming them against rock. Maya felt heat wash over her, felt shrapnel whip through the space where they'd been standing. When the ringing in her ears subsided enough to hear, she realized Keller was moving beneath her, pushing himself up. "You okay?" she gasped. "Better than I would have been," he replied, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Then his eyes widened. "Towards your leg." Maya looked down and saw blood soaking through her pant leg. She hadn't felt it in the adrenaline rush, but a piece of shrapnel had torn through her calf. Now that she'd noticed, pain flared like fire. "I can still move," she said through gritted teeth, though standing made her vision swim. "Like hell you can." Morrison appeared beside them, already pulling out medical supplies. "Stay down, Staff Sergeant, I've got you." While Morrison worked on her leg, applying pressure and wrapping the wound, Maya watched the firefight continue around them. Keller's team was holding, but barely. Professional warriors buying time and ground with precision fire, but slowly being overwhelmed by numbers. "We're not making it out like this," Keller said quietly, his tactical mind clearly running through options and finding them all inadequate. Maya's mind was working too, though the pain made thinking difficult. They were still 8 clicks from the border, pinned down by superior forces, with one team member wounded. The intelligence they'd gathered, the photographs, the documentation of the meeting, proof of the planned attacks, all of it would be lost if they were captured or killed here. "The camera equipment," she said suddenly. "Rodriguez, can you pull the memory cards and transmit the data?" Rodriguez crawled over, checking his communications gear. "Maybe. Signal's shit in these mountains, but if I can get high enough, boost the power, I might be able to burst transmit to a satellite uplink. But it would take time we don't have, and I'd need line of sight to the northeast." "That ridge," Patterson pointed to an outcropping 60 meters away. "Perfect sight lines, but it's exposed. Anyone going up there would draw every hostile in the area." "Then we give them a reason to focus somewhere else," Keller said. He was already formulating a plan. Maya could see it in his eyes. "We split up. Team Alpha, Morrison, Chen, Rodriguez, you get Tors and that equipment to the ridge and transmit. Team Bravo, me, Patterson, Briggs, we draw their attention and lead them away." "That's a suicide mission," Morrison protested. "It's a necessary sacrifice," Keller corrected. "This intel is bigger than any of us. If we can get it transmitted, Harrison's team can act on it immediately. The mission succeeds even if we don't make it out." Maya grabbed his arm. "Commander Jack, you can't." "I can and I will." His blue eyes locked with hers, and she saw the determination there, the acceptance of what had to be done. "Get that intelligence transmitted. That's an order, Staff Sergeant." Before she could argue further, Keller was moving, shouting orders. Team Bravo opened up with everything they had, drawing fire as they displaced away from the ridge. The hostiles took the bait, shifting focus to pursue what appeared to be the main force. "Move," Morrison urged, helping Maya to her feet. Chen supported her other side as they hobbled toward the ridge, Rodriguez already scrambling up ahead with the communications equipment. Maya looked back once and saw Keller's team disappearing into the rocks, leading their pursuers away with the kind of selfless courage that defined what it meant to be a warrior. Explosions and gunfire echoed behind them, growing more distant. "Almost there," Chen encouraged. "Keep moving, Staff Sergeant." They reached the ridge, and Rodriguez immediately began setting up his equipment. Maya collapsed against a boulder, her wounded leg screaming in protest. Morrison reloaded his rifle, taking up an overwatch position. "How long?" Morrison asked. 2 minutes to establish connection, maybe 3 to transmit everything," Rodriguez replied, his fingers flying over the equipment. "Assuming I can get a clean signal." Those minutes stretched like hours. Maya could still hear the firefight in the distance, Keller's team holding off their pursuers, buying time with their lives if necessary. She thought about that first day on the range, the impossible dare, the gradual building of trust and respect between her and the SEAL commander. She thought about the morning on the safe house balcony, watching the sunrise together. "Got it," Rodriguez's voice broke through her thoughts. "Signal established, uploading now, transmission at 40%, 60%. An explosion echoed from the valley below, closer than the others. "They're coming back this way," Chen said tensely. "They figured out what we're doing." 80%, Rodriguez continued, his voice steady despite the approaching threat. Come on, come on." Maya forced herself up, gripping her rifle despite the pain. If hostile forces reached them before the transmission completed, this had all been for nothing. Morrison and Chen took position beside her, 3 warriors preparing for a last stand on a mountain ridge in a foreign country where they had no right to be. 95%, Rodriguez said, "almost there." Gunfire erupted from below. Maya saw hostiles advancing up the ridge, at least 6 of them, weapons raised. "Transmission complete," Rodriguez shouted triumphantly. "Harrison's got everything." "Then let's make sure we survive to enjoy it," Morrison said, opening fire. The next minutes were chaos, desperate fighting at close quarters, ammunition running low, Maya's wounded leg barely supporting her weight. But they held. 3 soldiers and 1 wounded markswoman, holding a ridge because retreat wasn't an option. Then, impossibly, reinforcements arrived. Keller burst onto the ridge with Patterson and Briggs, all 3 battered and bleeding but alive, laying down covering fire that drove the hostiles back. "Thought you were leading them away," Morrison shouted. "We did," Keller replied, dropping an empty magazine and slamming in a fresh one. "Then we looped back because I'm not leaving anyone behind." The transmission went through, Maya called to him. "Harrison has everything." Relief flashed across Keller's face. "Then we just need to survive the next 8 clicks to the border. Everyone who can move, move now." They descended the ridge in a controlled fall, half running, half sliding down the rocky slope. Maya felt Keller's arm around her waist, supporting her weight, refusing to let her fall behind despite his own injuries. The hostiles pursued, but without coordination and facing a team of determined special operators, their attacks became sporadic. As dawn broke over the desert, Keller's team crossed back into United States territory, collapsing in exhaustion just beyond the border markers. Waiting for them were Harrison's intelligence team, and a full platoon of Marines who'd been positioned for emergency extraction. "You actually did it," Harrison said, approaching with medical personnel. "The transmission came through clean. We've got faces, documents, attack plans, everything we need." "Then it was worth it," Maya said, letting the medics examine her leg, letting the exhaustion finally claim her. Keller dropped down beside her as the medics worked. You saved my life back there, that RPG. You would have done the same, Maya said softly. Doesn't mean I'm not grateful. He reached out, squeezing her hand. We make a good team, Tors. The best, she agreed, squeezing back before the pain medication the medics had administered pulled her under into darkness. The hearing room at Naval Base San Diego was packed beyond capacity. Media credentials had been issued to every major news outlet, and the gallery overflowed with military personnel, civilian supporters, and protesters holding signs both condemning and praising the rogue operators, who'd crossed into Mexico without authorization. Maya sat at the defendant's table, her wounded leg still wrapped beneath her dress uniform. Beside her sat Commander Jack Keller, wearing his service dress blues, the ribbons on his chest telling the story of a distinguished career now hanging in the balance. It had been 3 weeks since their extraction from the border. 3 weeks during which Harrison's intelligence team had worked frantically to verify the evidence, identify the conspirators, and coordinate with federal law enforcement. The raids had happened simultaneously, 14 arrests across 5 states, including Captain Theodore Marsh, who'd been feeding intelligence to the network for 18 months in exchange for payments totaling over $2 million. The planned attacks had been prevented, 9 military installations secured, hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives saved. And now Maya and Keller faced court-martial for the unauthorized operation that had made it all possible. All rise, the bailiff announced. This Article 32 hearing is now in session, Captain Rebecca Walsh presiding. Captain Walsh was a stern woman in her 50s, her gray hair pulled back severely, her expression unreadable. She'd spent 25 years as a Navy JAG officer, with a reputation for both fairness and inflexibility regarding military regulations. Be seated, Walsh said, her voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. We are here to determine whether sufficient evidence exists to recommend court-martial proceedings against Staff Sergeant Maya Tors, United States Army, and Commander Jack Keller, United States Navy, for charges including unauthorized absence, conduct unbecoming, unauthorized cross-border operations, and reckless endangerment. Maya felt her stomach clench. The charges, laid out so formally, made their actions sound reckless rather than necessary. She glanced at Keller, who sat with the same calm composure he'd shown under fire. The prosecution went first, methodically building their case. Yes, Tors and Keller had uncovered a genuine threat. Yes, their intelligence had led to arrests and prevented attacks, but they had also violated the chain of command, ignored orders to stand down, conducted military operations on foreign soil without authorization, and endangered their team in the process. The ends do not justify the means, the prosecutor argued. If we allow service members to take unilateral action whenever they believe they've identified a threat, we undermine the entire structure of military discipline and civilian control over armed forces. Their actions, however well-intentioned, represent a dangerous precedent. Then came the defense, and with it, a parade of witnesses that surprised everyone. Lieutenant Commander Harrison testified about the intelligence Tors and Keller had provided, confirming that official channels had been compromised and that immediate action was necessary. He presented the evidence gathered from the surveillance operation, photographs that had led directly to identifying 12 co-conspirators within the military and civilian contractor community. Morrison took the stand next, his shoulder still bandaged, describing the mountain ambush that had first exposed the conspiracy. They saved my life, he said simply, and then they saved thousands more by having the courage to act when others wouldn't. But the testimony that changed everything came from an unexpected source. The defense calls Brigadier General Patricia Cortez, the defense attorney announced. A murmur ran through the courtroom. General Cortez was a legend, 3 combat tour, former commander of Joint Special Operations Command, and currently serving as Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. She walked to the witness stand with the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime making impossible decisions. "General Cortez," the defense attorney began, "you've reviewed the intelligence gathered by Staff Sergeant Torres and Commander Keller." "I have extensively." "In your professional opinion, would the attacks have been prevented through normal channels and timelines?" Cortez's answer was direct and damning. "No. The network had infiltrated our investigation process at multiple levels. Every attempt to investigate through official channels was being monitored, suppressed, or redirected. By the time we would have worked through proper diplomatic protocols to address a compound in Mexican territory, the attacks would have already occurred. So their actions, while unauthorized, were necessary. Their actions were the only reason we're not investigating mass casualty events at 9 military installations right now." Cortez turned to look directly at Maya and Keller. What Staff Sergeant Torres and Commander Keller did required exceptional courage, skill, and judgment. They saw a threat that others were either unable or unwilling to acknowledge, and they acted to neutralize it. That's exactly what we train our best warriors to do. The prosecutor cross-examined, trying to undermine the general's testimony, but Cortez was unshakable. She acknowledged the regulatory violations while insisting that the unique circumstances justified extraordinary action. After 2 days of testimony, Captain Walsh called for closing arguments. Maya barely heard them. Her mind was replaying the past month, wondering if she'd make the same choices again knowing the consequences. She glanced at Keller and found him already looking at her, a slight smile on his face. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. "This hearing stands in recess pending my decision," Walsh announced. "We will reconvene in 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt longer than the entire operation. Maya paced the hallway outside the hearing room, her wounded leg aching with each step. Keller sat on a bench, outwardly calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Morrison and the rest of the SEAL team had gathered nearby, along with Harrison, and a growing crowd of supporters wearing "Stand with Torres and Keller" t-shirts. Finally, the bailiff called them back. Walsh's expression remained unreadable as everyone settled. "I have reviewed all testimony and evidence presented. This hearing must determine not just whether regulations were violated, clearly they were, but whether those violations warrant court-martial proceedings." Maya held her breath. "The charges of unauthorized absence and conduct unbecoming are dismissed. The defendants acted on intelligence suggesting an imminent threat to national security, and their subsequent actions validated that assessment." Relief flooded through Maya, but Walsh wasn't finished. "However, the charges of unauthorized cross-border operations cannot be dismissed. What Staff Sergeant Torres and Commander Keller did was unauthorized, regardless of the outcome. Therefore, I am recommending the following. Both defendants will receive formal letters of reprimand to be placed in their service records. Staff Sergeant Torres will accept a voluntary reduction in rank to sergeant. Commander Keller will receive a 6-month suspension from operational duties." Maya's heart sank. A reduction in rank was a significant blow to her career, but then Walsh continued. "Additionally, both defendants will be awarded the Defense Distinguished Service Medal for actions that prevented catastrophic loss of life. This hearing is adjourned." The room erupted. Some cheered, others protested, but Maya just stood there trying to process what had happened. Not court-martialed, not discharged, reprimanded, yes, and demoted, but still able to serve. Keller pulled her into a fierce hug, and she heard him whisper, "We did it. We actually did it." Outside the hearing room, they were mobbed by supporters and media. Harrison pushed through the crowd, grinning. "The DIA wants to talk to you both. Turns out there's a new joint task force being formed, special operations personnel working with intelligence analysts to identify and respond to emerging threats. They need people who can think outside the box." "People who are willing to break rules?" Maya asked. People who know when rules need to be broken, Harrison corrected. Interested. Maya looked at Keller, saw the same question in his eyes that she felt in her heart. This was a crossroads: return to conventional military service, or step into something new, something that would use their unique skills and partnership in ways neither had imagined. Can we think about it? Keller asked. Take your time, you've earned it. 3 days later, Maya stood on the rifle range where it had all begun. The sun hung low over the mountains, casting the same long shadows it had that afternoon when Keller had dared her to make an impossible shot. She heard footsteps behind her and knew, without turning, that it was Keller. "Beautiful evening," he said, joining her at the firing line. "It is." Maya was quiet for a moment, then added, "I've been thinking about Harrison's offer." "Me too. I became a soldier to protect people, to serve something bigger than myself." She turned to face him. "For a long time, I thought that meant following every rule, every regulation, every order without question. But these past weeks taught me something different. That sometimes protecting people means knowing when to break the rules. That sometimes it means trusting your judgment, your partners, and your mission more than bureaucracy." Maya smiled. "I'm going to accept the task force position. What about you?" Keller was quiet, studying her face. "I've spent 15 years as a SEAL. It's been my whole identity. But working with you, this operation, this partnership, it showed me there's more than one way to serve." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." He extended his hand. "Partners." Maya shook it firmly. "Partners." They stood together as the sun set. Two warriors who'd proven that impossible was just another word for difficult, that courage sometimes meant disobeying orders, and that the most important shots weren't always the ones measured in meters. Behind them on the target range, the 4,000-meter markers stood silent. Maya had proven she could make that shot, not once, but twice, under conditions that should have made it impossible. But she'd learned something more important. Some targets were worth any distance, any risk, any cost. And with the right partner beside you, nothing was truly impossible. "Want to take one more shot?" Keller asked, gesturing toward the distant ridge. "For old time's sake." Maya smiled, picking up her rifle. "You know I never could resist a dare, Commander." She settled into position, felt the familiar calm descend, and fired. 7 seconds later, the distant target rang with the impact. Dead center, perfect accuracy, impossible made real. As the echo faded across the mountains, Maya stood and turned toward her future. A future of new challenges, new missions, new impossibilities to overcome. But she wouldn't face them alone. She'd found something even rarer than the perfect shot. A partnership built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding that some battles were worth fighting, no matter what the regulations said. Together, she and Keller walked off the range as the last light faded from the sky, ready for whatever came next. Beyond the crosshairs, beyond the impossible shots, beyond everything they'd known before. The mission was complete, but their story
Perfetto.
was
Ho
just
detto: "Basta
beginning.
che non mi fate arrestare,
The
poi fate
end.
quello che volete." Sono partiti i link in God. Sì, godo. Sì, non farmi le cheat, faccio cosa voglio. Ah, certo, certo, classi, sì, classi.